Professor Bibber, how do you view the Western Balkans entering this new year? Is the region closer to European integration, or do you fear, as you argue in your book, Powder Keg Balkans, that the region will have increased influence by Russia and China if the European Union neglects it?
Well, there are some signs that the European Union is taking the Western Balkans more seriously, and that's encouraging. We have a new commissioner who is much more serious about genuine enlargement than the predecessor. So we have not an Orban-like support for enlargement, which will be blocked, as we can see, by other member states, but a more substantial one, which will give more benefit. Also, we see this in the EU Western Balkan summit a few days ago. The kind of commitment is much clearer. The language is much more not about European perspective, but membership, about the importance of membership. And the geopolitical argument which the EU uses, of course, gives in a certain way a greater urgency to the enlargement and a kind of narrative for the EU itself, which it lacked for many years for the Western Balkans. So that's encouraging. What is discouraging is that the EU is still, and talking about the Commission, not been very critical when it comes to questions of democracy and rule of law in the region.
The EU Western Balkans summit finished with new promises for the European future of the region. Do you believe them to be credible? Because a lot of people will say it has all been heard before.
Well, of course, I mean, the overall commitment is nothing new. The EU has been doing this for many years. I think it's more concrete, it's more specific now. If we look at read the conclusions, there is, first of all, this kind of clearer sense of urgency from the EU side. There are more concrete steps than we had in some previous declarations. There's this commitment to this gradual integration of the countries, which I think is overall a positive sign. So I think I get a sense that there is a change of rhetoric, that this commitment is not the same we've had 3 or 4 years ago. And this is owed a lot to new Commission, the geopolitical circumstances, especially with the war in Ukraine, also the sense for the EU that with the Trump presidency, it really is in a certain way needs to be more active on that matter. So I do see new signals there. Of course, the problem is, and we saw this during the press conference when Ursula von der Leyen and the new president of the council, Kostas, were asked about bilateral issues. I mean, they very clearly said that they were against the bilateralization of the EU enlargement process, but at the same time, they offered no way out of this. And this, I think, shows the problem. There is a commitment there, but there isn't really a vision of how to make it work in practice.
Do you expect the region to be in the European Union in the next 5 years? There was such a promise by Charles Michel, but Antonio Costa did not repeat the same thing.
Well, I don't think, I mean, he wasn't asked this. I think probably it's always, these promises are always tricky. And I think Michel made this promise without coordination with others. And I think that was not very helpful. I mean, I think the date 2030 for at least some countries of the region to join was a good goal, but it's not useful to just give a date. I think there you have to have the commitment of the member states, of the Commission to say, okay, if you do this, this, and this, we will be ready to accept you in the European Union in 2030. This is, I think, what we're looking for is a commitment to the date from the EU side, saying, of course, you know, the countries have to fulfill the conditions. It's not automatic, but if you do, then you get in. Second of all, what will this next enlargement look like? And there we haven't had a vision from the European Union of what the next enlargement will look like. Will it be trying to have as many countries join at once? And, you know, I'm thinking specifically of 3 countries, you know, which are Albania, Montenegro, and North Macedonia, which is, despite the issue with Bulgaria, North Macedonia has no other serious bilateral issues or internal issues, unlike Serbia, Kosovo, or Bosnia-Herzegovina. So these 3 could join in 2030, but we haven't heard a vision from the European Union how and what this would look like. So I would sympathize with Costa for not promising dates without the genuine backbone of the Commission and the Council in formulating what this will look like.
Macedonia is still in the waiting room. The new government argues for constitutional amendments with delayed effect. Is this realistic to you, and can the country get some kind of guarantees by the European Union that there will be no new blockades?
Well, I mean, I think one has to have a pragmatic solution for this issue, and I think a delayed constitutional amendment is something that was even discussed back with Greece, or the name change with Greece, and that context. It was dismissed as being a bit too complicated, but I think it's a good sign that the government is willing to contemplate these kind of issues. I think that's positive. I mean, I think every observer would consider that the constitutional amendments and the whole process has been, rather unfair to North Macedonia. There's no doubt about that. But I think the issue is really how to get out of it. And because North Macedonia, in terms of all other indicators, in terms of legal reforms, is better prepared than any other country, maybe except for Montenegro in the region, it could accelerate very quickly and could be indeed part of those three countries. Of course, the EU cannot give any guarantee because this is, any country can block it. I mean, we don't have a 100% guarantee. What we could have is a clearer commitment of the member states who want enlargement, and especially big ones like Germany, Italy, to say that they will do everything to put pressure on other countries not to use vetoes, and that there is a kind of a genuine commitment. This was there in 2004 when the 10 countries joined, to say we don't want to have these bilateral issues now get in the way. This is too important for all of us that we cannot afford for the kind of selfish national interests of a specific country to block it. If that commitment is very clear, that it's not a guarantee, but then at least it shows that there is a counterweight. This was the problem with the Bulgarian veto. It's not that Bulgaria vetoed it, but there wasn't enough pressure from the others to say, this is more important to us. We will do whatever it takes to help North Macedonia move forward.
Montenegro was blocked for opening new chapters by Croatia. The same case was with Serbia, which was blocked by Bulgaria, again for bilateral issues. If the trend continues, do you see a rise in nationalism and Euroscepticism in the region?
I would fully agree with your claim that bilateral issues worsen nationalism, and I think we've seen this in the case of North Macedonia. I think ever since Bulgaria has been blocking North Macedonia, the image and the negative views of Bulgaria have increased in North Macedonia. I mean, Bulgaria has actually done itself a great disservice. I think many Macedonians looked to Bulgaria very positively before the Bulgarian veto, and now that image is ruined. And the same would be the case if Croatia would block Bosnia, for example. And so in that sense, I think there's a high price which is paid in bilateral relations and damage done, which is hard to undo. I think even if the veto would be dropped tomorrow and a solution would be found for North Macedonia, I think there's a lot of bad blood as a result of this veto, understandably, and it will take a longer time to get rid of it, to reduce those tensions. And so I think one has to, in a certain way, be more, let's say, more rational also from those EU member states. But of course, they're doing it not because of bilateral issues, but they're doing it for domestic politics. And this is the problem.